Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, two prominent Republican politicians that are poised to face off against each other in what's sure to be, if nothing else, a very newsworthy primary season to determine who will be challenging the 80-year-old incumbent president of the United States, Joseph Biden. Biden, in 2020, had fairly soundly defeated Donald Trump in the presidential election, pushed largely forward by a massive block of voters that had never supported Trump, as well as a few who grew wary of Trump after 4 years. By an almost identical electoral college victory margin that Trump achieved over Hillary Clinton in 2016, Biden was heading into the White House for the first time since he finished his term as Barack Obama's vice president in 2017. Now, almost 4 years later, we're gearing up for another race, and as usual, Star Wars happens to be on my mind. It's quite remarkable how that works. You watch an episode of the Clone Wars where they talk about the mundane, bureaucratic failures of the Republic. Then you see an episode of The Mandalorian where nothing important gets done in the New Republic after a stunning and inspired victory against the Empire, all the while thinking to yourself, man, this seems familiar. It seems familiar because we, particularly the Americans listening to this video, live it right now. The history classes we sat in and barely paid attention to as children would spin a lovely story, like a coloring book. We live in a country with a rich and inspired history that began with winning a war against an unbeatable empire, the British. At least that's the rose-tinted, uncomplicated version of a story that would take much longer to get deep into. That country, America, several times over, is the most powerful nation on the planet. And now, in 2023, the country has never been wealthier, never been stronger, and never been more wide-reaching in terms of influence than they are right now. If you read all of that on black and white paper, it sounds pretty good. The Star Wars franchise has shadowed and mimicked the United States since the late 1970s, and while I certainly appreciate and to an extent agree with the notion that Star Wars' magic is about pew-pew blasters and vroosh lightsabers and mystical green men who speak in riddles, the political engine was always the quiet and not-so-subtle force that was driving this franchise forward. Through the administrations of Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Clinton, Bush the Younger, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and now Joe Biden, Star Wars has endured and slowly fleshed out its own story by watching the United States continue to craft their own. I mean, think about it. Mega corporations that lobby political representatives to pass legislation making them more money and displacing millions from their homes so that factories can rise in their place. The Republic turning a blind eye to slavery across the galaxy despite championing themselves as defenders of peace and justice. The slow wheels of the Republic's governing body grinding to a halt whenever serious progress on workers' rights or living conditions begin to finally take shape. Movements like that of the separatists getting hijacked and diluted by powerful corporate business entities that hope to carve out a lucrative future. The valid criticisms that the separatists had be damned. Apathetic Republic citizens not realizing until it's too late how far their country's promise has fallen. Have we not seen this in our own country today? The attempted coup of January 6, 2021, the economic crisis of 2008 that was a culmination of predatory businessmen that profited greatly off unwitting homeowners and watched as hundreds of thousands of Americans lost everything? The COVID pandemic, which was politicized immediately and continues to add to the already staggeringly large death toll? Star Wars may be following America and the rest of the world, but even as early as the 2000s, before a bank failed in 2008, it has successfully painted a picture of clear warning for the United States through a lens of fun family time in a galaxy far, far away. For a long time, Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, was my favorite movie in the saga for the intense lightsaber duels and the excellent music. I recited the lines, "So this is how liberty dies," with thunderous applause, not really knowing just how significant and accurate that phrase actually was. As I got older, got my history degree, lived through a pandemic and whatever the hell January 6th was, and started developing my own political beliefs, Revenge of the Sith scares me more than it entertains me. Now those words from Padme are eerie and disturbing instead of lines off of a paper. They felt like an intruder in my house waiting to strike. Because I understood what she was saying now and realized that it could happen in real life. It has happened in real life. Donald Trump is running for re-election and has a 30-point lead over the next closest primary contender as of right now. Just over 2 years removed from attempting to overthrow the government, weeks removed from being the only president in history to be indicted, he is a frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination. Candidates have won elections by 20 points or more, spewing the most vile, angry poison you'll hear from an elected official. They'll be met with cheering crowds as they look forward to removing the rights of not just those that disagreed with them, but eventually everyone clapping for them as well. Revenge of the Sith is no longer as entertaining to me as a space opera. Now it's a documentary and a warning shot that was fired by George Lucas, telling the United States to get its shit together. Not to sound too corny, but freedom is truly on the line right now in America and the world. Marginalized communities haven't been this concerned on a broad level since the 1950s and 60s. Our economy is wobbly. It's damn near impossible to find a home. Gun violence, stochastic terror from pundits, the ever-present white nationalism that is threatening to bulldoze into the political and social mainstream once again because that problem does not go away by ignoring it and hand-waving them as nutcases. Corporations wiping thousands of people into unemployment and poverty so that they can turn a profit for the top executives. But listen, because I don't want to end on a doom and gloom. As you go about your days and try and find some moments of relaxation in this ridiculously chaotic country and world, understand that it doesn't have to be like this. We can be a better society. And just like Star Wars wants to make us wary of the problems facing our country, it also wants us to be hopeful of what our country can be. But we need to pull together in order to reach that point, and that's admittedly easier said than done. But I believe that a better life in America is ultimately achievable, not because of a naive trust and hope in our institutions to save us, even though they are important, but because of my hope in us as a people. God, that's corny. Hope is an important theme in Star Wars, but it takes more than hope to get stuff done, especially in the real world. And Star Wars has done a good job making that clear as well. If you want the best kind of advice when trying to prepare for concerns you have for the future, take a look at the past. That's something that history and Star Wars have in common. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more, and may the Force be with you, always.